Alright, hey guys, welcome to another video. Today Leo and I are going to be working on a 2018 Hyundai Tucson with a 2-liter 4-cylinder. And today we'll be showing you guys how to diagnose a camshaft position sensor and a crankshaft position sensor. And we'll be showing you how to use like a picoscope and just using multimeter and showing you how that works.
Here you can see the wiring for the crankshaft position sensor on the Hyundai. These wires start out as pink and gray coming out of the sensor, but then there's a connector here that they're not showing before it goes to it ends up out of the connector. It comes out gray and green white. The connector is what we're probed into. The gray is your ground and your green and white is your signal wire. Here on the Tucson, the location for the crankshaft position sensor is this connector right here, which goes down underneath the vehicle. To right here, and goes into, it's kind of hard to show you, but it goes into the engine right next to the transmission underneath the starter.
Alright, so we have our ohm meter connected up to our crankshaft position sensor, and right now it's reading 1 kilo ohm about with the engine not running. Alright, we got the voltmeter connected to the crankshaft position sensor, and so right now it's reading 9 volts at idle, and then we'll give it a few revs. It increases to about 20 volts, AC volts, and it goes back down to around 9 volts. You can see the engine speed increase spike. As the RPMs increase, the voltage increases. So that's because the sensor is generating its own voltage, and it'll increase the faster the crankshaft spins. So then next we'll go look on a picoscope at a graph. Alright, so now we're gonna see if the car runs with the sensor unplugged. As you can see right there, the crankshaft position sensor is unplugged. We're gonna start the car. So as you can see, the car will not start if the CKP sensor is unplugged.
So here with the engine running, and I've hooked up between the 2 pins of the sensor, it's hard to get a good DC voltage reading because it's reading in AC, and that changes as you give it gas or not. Also, if you look at the frequency, you can see the frequency, but that's better shown on the picoscope over here. So this is running. And if you stop it on one of those waveforms and you count the number of waves before a gap, you get 58. So it's 58 teeth from there to here, and then you have 1 missing. Go. All right, so this right side camshaft position sensor is the intake sensor. This yellow one is the ground that comes through the PCM fuse. The red is the signal to the PCM here, you can see. And then this green-white is ground, also through the PCM. On the left here, this is the exhaust one, the exhaust cam position sensor. So this yellow wire is your ground, which goes up to the PCM. This yellow and black here is your power, which is from this same relay that powers this. And then your white black here goes up to the signal to the PCM.
Okay, so we'll come over here and we'll see the wiring colors. So this yellow wire, that's going to be the power from the engine control relay. This red one right here, that's going to be the signal to the PCM. And the green one is going to be the ground also through the PCM. And then we'll go to the exhaust sensor. And there's a yellow and black wire, which is going to be your power from this also same relay. So that's going to be your furthest one. It's going to be right there. Then that middle wire, that's going to be your white and black wire, and it's going to be the signal wire from the PCM. And this yellow wire on the end, that's going to be your ground through the PCM.
Okay, so now we're pinned into the intake cam position sensor. So we have pins here for power, signal is yellow, and ground is black. So, if you look at our meter here, we'll check for power. And on this car, we actually have 12 volts at power, which is fine. And then you look at signal. Make sure that's on there. There we go. So that's kind of an average, jumping around. It should be reading frequency since it's a 3-wire sensor. And it's really jumping around a lot, and it's not exactly correct, but if you look at the chart on all data, the trigger wheel under this, the reluctor wheel, only has one tooth, so it would only give you a weird reading. So now I'm pinned into the exhaust camshaft position sensor. You can see we have, to the power side, I'm pinned between power and ground right now. We have 13 volts to power, and then I go to the signal with the Hall effect sensor. It has 3 wires, obviously. You should be getting a frequency reading, not a voltage reading. So I'll switch to frequency, and showing about 6 hertz, and which is way slower than a crank position sensor. And it might look like a bad reading, but when you think about it, the camshafts are turning at half the speed of the crankshaft, and this reluctor wheel only has 1 tooth on it. So 6 times a second really isn't too far off for an idle speed.
Alright, so now we're going to come over here and unplug the cam sensors, see if anything happens. So we'll unplug the intake side first. And as you can see on the scan tool, the engine RPMs have not dropped, no change at all. So now we'll do the exhaust side as well. And you can also see there's no change on the engine speed.
Alright, so now let's try to start it with both cam position sensors unplugged. So go ahead and crank it. Try it again. Yeah, it won't start. So now, if we plug them back in, it will start and run, and if I unplug them now, it'll stay running because they are not continuously used. They're only really used on startup, and then from there the PCM kind of remembers where the cylinder location is at. And then here you can see from that little run where we had the cam position sensors disconnected, this P0340 and P0365 pending codes for cam position sensor A and sensor B faults. Here it's running. You can see we've got line 1 tapped down to the crank position sensor. We've got line 2 tapped into the cam position sensor. And if you look at this over here, it shows you a nice illustration of, it'll stop it. It shows you a nice illustration of what one crankshaft rotation looks like. You see like the crankshaft rotates entirely with this on the high side, and then it rotates again with the cam position at 0, because it's just putting out a frequency output. So if you get rid of that trigger, well, you can see this jumping between 5 and ground. With it at idle, you can kind of see the crank position is flickering between 0 and 12, or minus 12 and 12. And when you rev it, it jumps up to, you know, anywhere as high as 30 volts, almost 40 volts. And the frequency of the cam position increases. Well, it's just the voltage increasing on the crankshaft side.